Hi there, my name is John Persell. I'm the Mount Hood Restoration Policy Coordinator with Pacific Rivers Council and BARC. As part of the Restore Mount Hood campaign, Pacific Rivers Council and BARC are currently in the midst of a partnership project to produce 3 white papers making policy recommendations for changes in the way Mount Hood National Forest is managed for water, wildlife, and quiet recreation. Pacific Rivers Council has a lot of experience bringing science to the forefront of policy, and BARC is very effective at generating community involvement in the protection of Mount Hood National Forest. So combining each organization's strengths has made for a good fit for this project. So today we're sharing draft recommendations from our water white paper. And thankfully, Mary and Chris have laid the foundation for a lot of these recommendations. We don't have a lot of time to go through them, but you do have the handout in your packet. And I'm going to share those with you now again. And they are still in draft form, so we look forward to your feedback that might be generated in breakout sessions later. Some of these recommendations are just minor tweaks on the current management direction happening on the ground, while others are fairly significant changes. The goal for these recommendations, though, is to help the Forest Service continue to deliver cold, clear water in the face of increasing pressures from population growth, recreation demands, and climate change. Cold, clear water, as it has been noted, is good for both human needs as well as aquatic species. So, to start off, this one's a fairly technical recommendation that stems from management direction in the Northwest Forest Plan. We are recommending that the Forest Service adopt riparian buffer widths of 2 site potential tree lengths without a distinction between fish-bearing and non-fish-bearing streams, and without distinction between permanent and seasonal or intermittent streams. We further are recommending that timber harvest be excluded within that first site potential tree length. So a little more context. The Northwest Forest Plan sets forth requirements for management in riparian reserves and requires that those riparian reserves be certain widths based on what is they call a site potential tree length. And that basically just means the height of a tree that could grow in a particular stream stretch. But the Northwest Forest Plan made distinctions between permanent and intermittent or seasonal streams, as well as distinctions between fish-bearing and non-fish-bearing streams. Upon reviewing the scientific literature, that distinction did not make sense for the overall goal of providing cold, clear water for both human and aquatic resource needs. So we are recommending that distinction be done away with and exclude timber harvest within that first site potential tree length. This next recommendation flows directly from what Chris was just saying about when is riparian thinning appropriate. We are recommending that timber harvest be restricted in the second site potential tree length and only allowed after applying the 6 screening criteria that Chris just reviewed. We also have a recommendation regarding mechanical fuel treatments in riparian areas. These mechanical fuel treatments, which are basically commercial or non-commercial thinning actions, are targeted at reducing fire hazard. However, we are recommending that such fuel treatments be restricted in riparian areas and along headwater streams to locations in the wildland-urban interface, or the WUI, and with no exception for municipal watersheds. Some of these fuel treatments are done under the premise that they will prevent excessive sediment delivery following a catastrophic wildfire, but upon review of the scientific literature again, it came to our attention that often the impacts from these treatments persist a lot longer than sediment delivery from wildfire would. The wildland-urban interface, just to give a little more context of that, refers to where human structures are adjacent to undeveloped forest lands. And so, that is the location in which some of these treatments might be appropriate to protect human lives, human infrastructure. We also have a recommendation about grazing. Mount Hood National Forest does not receive as much grazing impact as other units of the National Forest System, but still 16% of the forest is impacted by grazing allotments. And grazing by livestock tends to disproportionately impact riparian areas. Livestock like to get down to where the water is, and that riparian vegetation is very attractive to them. So we are recommending that livestock be excluded from riparian and headwater stream areas. And ways to pursue this, we recommend that the Forest Service look at retiring vacant and inactive allotments, developing off-stream watering sites for livestock, and also wildlife-friendly fencing. This is kind of a fun one. We are recommending that beavers be restored to the forest and range landscape. Historically, beavers inhabited pretty much the entire acreage of Mount Hood National Forest, with the exception of the very high elevations. But especially on the east side, they've been eradicated. They no longer exist. The fur trade did a number on them, as well as just them being considered a nuisance for a long time. However, beaver damming actually provides complex habitat for aquatic species. It helps moderate base and peak flows, and maintains hydrologic connectivity between wetlands and streams. So it's a very critical component of functioning ecosystems that is currently missing from a big chunk of Mount Hood National Forest. We are also recommending that protections under the roadless rule be extended to those roadless areas of 1,000 contiguous acres or greater. Currently, the roadless rule generally applies to inventoried roadless areas of 5,000 acres or greater, but there are still a number of 1,000 or greater acre or greater roadless areas that do not have these protections under the roadless rule. We would further recommend a prohibition on temporary road construction, though, in all roadless areas, something that is currently still allowed in certain circumstances under the roadless rule. Our next recommendation tries to get at what we call ghost roads, those user-created, often unauthorized routes that exist on the landscape or somehow were developed by logging companies or the Forest Service itself, but have not been documented and included in the Forest Service's official database of roads. Obviously, a number of roads analyses have taken place on Mount Hood National Forest, but we are recommending that the Forest Service review available information to identify and assess the aquatic risks and treatment options for all of those road segments that do exist on the landscape but haven't been documented as being hydrologically stabilized. And as Mary pointed out, that generally means that they are hydrologically disconnected from the stream network. Mary also talked a little bit about road density and its use as a measurement of impacts from the road network to watersheds. And we are recommending that the Forest Service establish road density standards for Mount Hood National Forest at the 6-field sub-watershed scale, and initially targeting a density of less than 1.5 miles per square mile. We're also recommending that for Mount Hood National Forest, the Forest Service establish hydrologic connectivity limits for the road network at the sub-watershed scale with an initial target of less than 10% connectivity. And that 10% connectivity has been discussed as reasonably achievable by a number of geologists, and Mary made reference to that earlier. Finally, we have a couple recommendations for Mount Hood National Forest in the face of climate change and population growth. First, upon looking at the website of the Oregon Water Resources Department, it appeared as though adjudication of water rights in the Clackamas River Basin and the Sandy River Basin has not yet taken place. Now, these adjudication of water rights refers to resolving any disputes among water rights holders. And the Forest Service, Mount Hood National Forest, is one of those water rights holders. The U.S. Supreme Court has recognized that national forests have what's known as reserved water rights that date back to the time of when an individual forest was set aside by the federal government. Typically, those reserved water rights only apply to furnishing a continuous supply of timber and more importantly, conserving water flows, and that's what we would like to emphasize here. However, for the Bull Run area in particular, dating back to the early 1890s, it was set aside as a municipal water supply for the Portland metropolitan area. So we are recommending that Mount Hood National Forest prepare now to engage early on in any adjudication process for water rights in the Sandy River and Clackamas River basins, because it will be important that it quantifies the amount of water it's going to need to continue to manage Mount Hood National Forest into the future. And finally, we are also recommending that Mount Hood National Forest establish and protect water quality and quantity as the leading use of the forest. We feel that this would both complement and allow for other multiple uses of the forest, such as recreation, fish and wildlife habitat, municipal water supplies, and healthy forest conditions. The Forest Service has a mandate from the Multiple Use Sustained Yield Act to manage for multiple uses, but prioritizing water quality and quantity is not inconsistent with all those other multiple uses I just listed. So those are our draft recommendations. I know in these breakout sessions that are going to happen, we're hoping there'll be some discussion generated by these, and we look forward to your feedback on them. And if any of the terms you need more context for, definitions, feel free to approach Mary, Chris, or I, and we will do our best to fill you in on how we generated these recommendations.